Bound by debt. A dark mafia romance. Billionaire marries the daughter of his debtor to collect what he's owed, but what he discovers on his wedding night leaves him breathless. Prologue. The contract. The champagne had gone flat an hour ago. Victoria Ashford stood at the window of her father's study, watching rain streak down the glass like tears she refused to shed. Beyond the manicured lawns of the Ashford estate, London sprawled in gray indifference, unaware that tonight, at 24 years old, she was being sold. Not in those words, of course. Her father, Richard Ashford, once a titan of British finance, now a desperate man drowning in debt, had dressed it up in prettier language. A strategic alliance, a merger of families, an opportunity. But Victoria knew the truth. She'd seen the letters, heard the late-night phone calls, watched her father's hand shake as he poured his third whiskey before noon. The Ashford fortune was gone, gambled away on bad investments and worse decisions. And the man who held the note, who held everything, was come and collect. Victoria. Her father's voice cracked like old leather. He'll be here any moment. Please, darling, try to smile. Try to what, father? She turned from the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. Pretend I'm happy to be bartered like livestock? Pretend I don't know you've sold me to a criminal to save your own skin? Richard Ashford flinched. At 58, he looked 70, face gaunt, eyes hollow, the picture of a man who'd lost everything including his spine. Alexander Volkov is not a criminal. He's a legitimate businessman. Who makes people disappear when they don't pay? Victoria's voice was ice. Don't insult me by pretending otherwise. I've read about him. The Volkov family doesn't build an empire by playing nice. Then you understand why we have no choice. Her father's shoulders sagged. He wants a wife. Someone from old British society. Someone respectable. Someone who can... He trailed off, unable to finish. Someone who can make him look legitimate. Victoria finished flatly. A respectable face for a disreputable fortune. And in exchange, our debt disappears. How much am I worth, father? How many millions am I erasing? 47 million pounds. The number hung in the air between them like smoke. Victoria had known it was bad, but hearing it aloud made her stomach turn. 47 million. Her entire life, her freedom, her future, all calculated down to a price. And if I refuse? Her father's silence was answer enough. The Volkov family didn't accept refusal. They didn't negotiate. Crossed them, and you didn't get a second chance. You got a funeral. The grandfather clock in the corner struck 8. As if summoned by the chime, gravel crunched in the driveway below. Victoria's breath caught despite herself. Through the rain-streaked window, she watched the black Mercedes pull up to the entrance. Sleek, expensive, ominous. Remember, her father said, voice shaking. Be polite. Be agreeable. Our lives depend on this. My life is already over, Victoria thought, but she said nothing. The study door opened. Stevens, their ancient butler, stood in the doorway looking more corpse-like than usual. Mr. Alexander Volkov, to see you, sir. And then he walked in. Victoria had seen photographs. The business journals loved Alexander Volkov, the mysterious Russian-British billionaire who transformed his family's shadowy empire into something that almost looked legal. At 35, he was CEO of Volkov Enterprises, which owned everything from real estate to tech companies to, rumor had it, half the politicians in Westminster. But photographs hadn't prepared her for the reality of him. He was tall, over 6 feet, with the kind of build that spoke of violence barely contained beneath expensive tailoring. His suit was Seville robe perfect, charcoal gray, and probably worth more than her car. Dark hair swept back from a face that was all sharp angles and harder edges. High cheekbones, strong jaw, a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath. Gray, cold as winter, calculating as a predator's. Those eyes found her instantly, swept over her with an assessment that felt invasive, proprietary, as if he was already cataloging what he'd purchased. Mr. Volkov. Her father rushed forward, hand extended, subservience written into every line of his body. Thank you for coming. May I offer you a drink? Something. No. Volkov's voice was deep, accented, British education over Russian roots, and held a kind of authority that made grown men flinch. He didn't even look at her father. His attention remained fixed on Victoria. "Leave us." "I what?" Richard stammered. "But surely we should discuss." "I said leave. Not a request. Not even a command. Simply a statement of fact, like gravity or death. I want to speak with my fiancée alone." The word fiancé hit Victoria like a slap. So it was already decided, already done, not even the pretense of courtship or choice. Her father hesitated for only a second before scurrying out like a kicked dog, closing the door behind him. The click of the latch sounded like a cell door locking. Silence stretched between them. Rain hammered against the windows. Victoria forced herself to meet those cold gray eyes, to not look away, to show no fear even though her heart was trying to claw its way out of her chest. "You're angry?" Volkov said it like an observation, not a question. He moved deeper into the room with the fluid grace of something dangerous. "Good. I don't want a simpering fool for a wife. I'm not your wife yet." The words came out sharper than she'd intended. One dark eyebrow lifted. A technicality. The contract is signed. The arrangements are made. We marry in 3 weeks, the debt disappears, and your father keeps his worthless life. This is not a negotiation, Miss Ashford. Then what is it? A kidnapping? A transaction? He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something dark and expensive that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Your father gambled away his fortune. I'm offering him a way out. All you have to do is say yes. And if I say no? Something flickered in those gray eyes. Not anger, exactly. Something colder. Then I collect my debt another way. Your father has 3 properties left. I take them. The family business, what's left of it, I liquidate it. Your mother's jewelry, your grandmother's paintings, every last asset gets seized. And then he leaned in, voice dropping to something that made her skin prickle. Then I have your father investigated properly. I promise you, Miss Ashford, I will find something criminal in his financial dealings, and I will ensure he spends the rest of his miserable life in prison. Victoria's nails dug into her palms. You're a monster. Yes. He said it simply, without shame. But I'm a monster who honors his contracts. Marry me, play the role of dutiful wife, and I will protect your family. Your father keeps his freedom. Your mother keeps her comfortable delusions. And you... Those cold eyes traveled down her body slowly, possessively. You keep breathing. That's not much of an offer. It's the only one you're getting. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. When he opened it, an engagement ring glittered inside, a massive diamond surrounded by smaller stones, set in platinum. It was beautiful and obscene and obviously worth a fortune. Give me your hand. I don't. Victoria. Her name on his lips felt like ownership. Your father owes me 47 million pounds. That number grows every day with interest. Unless you want to watch him dragged away in handcuffs, you will give me your hand. For a moment, she considered refusing. Considered letting her father face the consequences of his own stupidity. But then she thought her mother, fragile, unknowing, and her younger sister Emma, only 19, still at university, still innocent. If she said no, they would all suffer. Slowly. Hating herself. Hating him. Hating everything about this moment, Victoria extended her left hand. Volkov took it in his own. His touch was warm, which somehow made it worse. She'd expected Cole to match those eyes. He slid the ring onto her finger with practiced precision. It fit perfectly, of course. He'd probably investigated everything about her, down to her ring size. There. He didn't release her hand. Now you're mine. I'm not. The words died as he lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. Slow, deliberate, a mockery of romance. 3 weeks, he said against her skin. You will move into my Kensington residence in 2 days. A wedding planner will contact you tomorrow with details. You will smile for the photographs. You will play the blushing bride. And you will not embarrass me. Do you understand? Victoria yanked her hand back, the ring foreign and heavy on her finger. Perfectly. Good. He turned toward the door, then paused. One more thing, Victoria. Don't bother trying to run. I own this city. There's nowhere you could go that I wouldn't find you. And if you do try... He looked back at her, and for just a second, she saw the monster behind the businessman's mask. I will drag you back, and your father will pay the price. Then he was gone, leaving only the scent of expensive cologne, and the weight of the ring dragging down her hand like a chain. Victoria stood frozen, staring at the closed door. In the window's reflection, she saw herself, a ghost in designer clothes, marked for marriage to a devil, trapped in a cage made of debt and duty. The champagne was still flat on her father's desk. She walked over, picked up the glass, and threw it against the wall. The crystal shattered beautifully, bubbles and glass mixing with old wood and older money. 3 weeks. In 3 weeks, she would become Mrs. Alexander Volkov. And God help them both. Chapter 1. The Gilded Cage. The Kensington mansion was a monument to wealth that had forgotten how to apologize for itself. Victoria stood in the marble entrance hall, surrounded by her luggage, 3 suitcases that looked pathetically small in the vast space, and tried not to feel like she was attending her own funeral. Crystal chandeliers hung overhead like frozen waterfalls. The floors were white marble shot through with gold veins. Original artwork lined the walls, the kind that belonged in museums, not homes. Everything was beautiful. Everything was cold. Miss Ashford. A woman appeared from a side corridor, 50s, severe, dressed in what Victoria recognized as designer business wear. I'm Mrs. Petrova, the house manager. Mr. Volkov asked me to show you to your rooms. Rooms. Plural, as if one prison cell wasn't enough. Thank you. Victoria kept her voice neutral, her spine straight. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. Not yet. Mrs. Petrova led her up a sweeping staircase that belonged in a palace. The mansion has 42 rooms across 5 floors. Mr. Volkov occupies the east wing. Your suite is in the west wing for now. The pause before those last 2 words was deliberate, loaded with meaning Victoria didn't want to examine. They walked down a corridor lined with more priceless art, Monet, Klimt, Rothko, until Mrs. Petrova opened double doors into what could only be described as an apartment within the house. The sitting room alone was larger than Victoria's childhood bedroom. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked private gardens. A fireplace dominated one wall, flanked by built-in bookshelves, plush carpeting in cream, furniture that whispered money. Through an archway, Victoria glimpsed a bedroom with a bed large enough to drown in. Your dressing room is through there. Mrs. Petrova gestured to another door. Mr. Volkov has arranged for your wardrobe to be supplemented. A stylist will visit tomorrow morning. How thoughtful. The sarcasm slipped out before Victoria could stop it. Mrs. Petrova's expression didn't change. Dinner is served at 8 in the main dining room. Mr. Volkov expects you to join him. Please dress appropriately. She moved toward the door, then paused. A word of advice, Miss Ashford. Mr. Volkov is not a patient man, but he is, in his way, a fair one. Make this easy on yourself. Then she was gone, the doors closing with a soft, final click. Victoria stood alone in her gilded cage, the ring on her finger catching the afternoon light. For a moment, just a moment, she let herself feel the full weight of it, the fear, the anger, the suffocating sense of being trapped in a life she'd never chosen. Then she straightened her shoulders and started unpacking. She wouldn't cry, wouldn't break. Alexander Volkov might have bought her hand in marriage, but he hadn't bought her spirit. She would survive this, would find a way through it, and somehow, someday, she would be free. The dressing room was obscene. Victoria discovered an hour later. A room the size of most studio apartments, lined with wardrobes and drawers and mirrors. And hanging there, tags still attached, were clothes she'd never bought. Designer dresses, silk blouses, cashmere sweaters, shoes that cost more than her old car. Everything in her size, everything perfectly coordinated, everything screaming money. He'd done his research. Knew her measurements, her style, her preferences. The thought made her skin crawl. This stranger who bought her like commodity, now dressing her like a doll. She wanted to burn it all. Instead, she chose the simplest dress she could find, black, elegant, high-necked, and changed for dinner. If she had to play this role, she'd do it on her terms. She'd wear his clothes and sit at his table. But she wouldn't pretend to be grateful. At 7:58, Victoria made her way downstairs, following the sound of quiet classical music. The dining room was exactly what she'd expected. Massive mahogany table, more crystal, more gold, more everything. Candles flickered despite the modern lighting. The table was set for two, plates in cutlery position with military precision. And at the head of the table sat Alexander Volkov. He'd changed from his business suit into something more casual. Dark slacks, a white dress shirt open at the collar. Without the armor of his full suit, he looked younger, more human, almost. Then he looked up, and those cold gray eyes found her, an illusion shattered. Victoria. He stood, surprising her with a gesture, and pulled out the chair at his right. Punctual. I appreciate that. I'm nothing if not well-trained. She sat, not bothering to hide the edge in her voice. A ghost of something, amusement, irritation, flickered across his face. The staff has prepared Mediterranean sea base. I hope that's acceptable. As if my preferences matter. They do, actually. He sat back down, movements controlled and predatory. You're going to be my wife, Victoria. This works better if you're not miserable every moment. Then you shouldn't have blackmailed me into marrying you. Blackmail is such an ugly word. He poured wine into her glass, something red and probably priceless. I prefer mutually beneficial arrangement. There's nothing mutual about it. You get a respectable wife to legitimize your criminal empire. I get. She gestured around the opulent room. A prison with better furniture. You get your father's freedom, your family's safety. Your mother keeps her lifestyle. Your sister finishes university without worrying that daddy's going to prison. His voice was flat, factual. And yes, you get this. Wealth, security, protection. There are worse fates. Are there? Victoria met his eyes, refusing to look away. At least in an actual prison, I'd know the terms of my sentence. The staff appeared then, silent, efficient, placing plates of beautifully arranged fish in front of them before vanishing like ghosts. The interruption broke the tension, but barely. Volkov picked up his fork. The terms are simple. You play the role of my wife in public. You attend events with me. You smile for the cameras. You make me look like a respectable businessman instead of... He paused, something dark moving behind his eyes. What I actually am. A monster? Your word, not mine. He took a bite of fish, perfectly controlled. In private, you have freedom within reason. This house, the gardens, shops, restaurants, as long as you're accompanied by security. You're not a prisoner, Victoria. You're my fiancée. There's a difference? Yes. He set down his fork, and suddenly his full attention was on her. Focused, intense, almost overwhelming. A prisoner can't leave. You could walk out that door right now. I wouldn't stop you. Victoria's heart jumped. You're lying. I don't lie. Walk out. Go home. Be with your family. He leaned back, casual, but she could see the calculation in his eyes. Of course, the moment you do, the $47 million comes due. With interest. Your father has about 48 hours before I have him arrested, but you're free to choose. The trap closed around her like a vice. He was right. She could leave. Physically, she could walk out. But they both knew she wouldn't. Couldn't. Not without destroying her family. You're a bastard, she said quietly. Yes. No shame. No apology. But I'm a bastard who keeps his word. Marry me, Victoria. Play the role. And I promise you, your family will never want for anything. Your father's debts disappear. Your mother stays comfortable. Your sister gets her education. All you have to do is stand beside me. And share your bed? The question came out sharper than she'd intended, but she had to know. Had to understand the full price she was paying. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe. Eventually, yes, I need heirs. That's part of the arrangement. But not. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Not until you're ready. How generous. The sarcasm was thick enough to cut. It's practical. He picked up his wine, swirled it. Forced intimacy benefits neither of us. I want a wife, Victoria, not a terrified victim. When we share a bed, it will be because you choose it. That will never happen. Never is a long time. His smile was knife-edge sharp. People adapt. Situations change. You might surprise yourself. Victoria wanted to throw her wine in his face. Wanted to scream, to rage, to break something. Instead, she picked up her fork and took a bite of fish. It was infuriatingly delicious. They ate in silence for several minutes. The classical music, Chopin, she realized, filled the space between them. Despite everything, Victoria found herself observing him, the way he moved with unconscious grace. The scar along his left hand, barely visible. The tension he carried in his shoulders, like a man always ready for violence. He was handsome. She couldn't deny that. But it was the kind of beauty that belonged to winter or wolves, cold, dangerous, likely to kill you if you weren't careful. Tell me about yourself, Volkov said suddenly. Beyond what I already know from my research. Why? Planning to add it to my file? Planning to have a conversation. He set down his fork. We're going to be married, Victoria. We should at least know each other. Fine. What do you want to know? What did you study at Oxford? She blinked, surprised he even cared. Art history. Graduated 2 years ago. And then, I worked at the Tate. Junior curator position. I was supposed to start a PhD program this fall, but she gestured between them. Obviously, that's not happening now. Something shifted in his expression. Why not? Because I'll be too busy playing Mrs. Volkov. You could do both. He said it like it was obvious. Continue your education. Work if you want. I'm not asking you to be some housewife trophy. Victoria, I told you, you have freedom within reason. She stared at him, trying to understand the angle. Why would you allow that? Because a miserable wife is a problem. An occupied wife is an asset. He leaned forward slightly. I'm not trying to break you, Victoria. I'm trying to make this arrangement work. For both of us. This is an arrangement. It's a hostage situation with paperwork. Call it what you want. The reality remains the same. He pushed his plate aside, business complete. You'll have an allowance, no restrictions. Use it however you like. The cars in the garage are at your disposal with a driver. If you want to continue at the Tate, I can make a call. Of course you can. You probably own half the board. His smile was cold. 3/4, actually. Victoria set down her fork, appetite gone. Is there anything in this city you don't control? You. The word hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Not yet. The threat, or was a promise, sent a shiver down her spine. Victoria stood abruptly, chair scraping against marble. I've lost my appetite. If you'll excuse me. Victoria. His voice stopped her at the doorway. One more thing. She turned, wary. The wedding is in 21 days. The stylist will bring options tomorrow. Choose whatever you like. This day should be... He paused, something almost human crossing his face. Bearable at least. How romantic, she said flatly. I'm not a romantic man. Volkov stood, tall and intimidating even across the room. But I am a practical one. We're both trapped in this, Victoria. We can make it a war, or we can make it work. Your choice. She wanted to tell him she'd choose war, choose resistance, choose anything but compliance. But standing there in his mansion, wearing his clothes, bearing his ring, she realized a terrible truth. She didn't have a choice. Not really, and they both knew it. Good night, Mr. Volkov, she said. Alexander. His voice followed her into the hallway. Call me Alexander. We're engaged, after all. Victoria didn't answer. She walked back to her gilded cage in the West Wing, closed the doors, and finally, let herself cry. 21 days. In 21 days, she would marry a monster, and somehow she had to find a way to survive it. Chapter 2, The Perfect Bride. The wedding planner arrived at precisely 9 the next morning, accompanied by an entourage that could have staged a military invasion. Victoria watched from her suite window as they unloaded garment bags, sample books, and what appeared to be an entire florist inventory. She'd barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt the weight of the ring on her finger, heard Alexander's voice. "You're mine, Miss Ashford." Mrs. Petrova knocked once before entering. "They're ready for you in the south drawing room." The south drawing room turned out to be yet another absurdly large space Victoria hadn't discovered yet. The wedding team had transformed it into something between a bridal boutique and a war room. Fabric swatches covered every surface. Flower arrangements in various states of assembly crowded the tables. And standing in the center of it all was a woman who looked like she could orchestrate the coronation of a queen without breaking a sweat. Victoria Ashford. She swept forward, air-kissing both of Victoria's cheeks before she could retreat. "I'm Claudia Rothschild, and we are going to create the wedding of the century. Mr. Volkov has given me carte blanche, which means we can do absolutely anything. Anything. Now come, we have so much to discuss." For the next 4 hours, Victoria was measured, photographed, and interrogated about preferences she didn't have for a wedding she didn't want. Claudia showed her dress designs, each more extravagant than the last, and talked about venues and flowers and guest lists with the fervor of a woman possessed. "Now, the ceremony will be at St. George's Chapel," Claudia was saying, making notes on her tablet. "Mr. Volkov has already secured it. Very traditional, very elegant. The reception will be at Thornbury House. Do you know it? 18th century estate. Absolutely magnificent. We're thinking 300 guests." 300? Victoria's head snapped up. "That's not a wedding, that's a spectacle." "Well, yes, darling. That's rather the point." Claudia smiled like a shark. "Mr. Volkov is a very prominent man. Everyone who matters will be there. You'll be photographed, written about, discussed in every society column from here to Moscow. This isn't just a wedding, it's a statement. A statement that Alexander Volkov has arrived, that he's legitimate, that he's one of them now." Victoria looked down at the dress sketches scattered across her lap. All of them were beautiful. Intricate lace, flowing silk, details that would cost more than most people earned in a year. All of them felt like costumes for a play she'd never auditioned for. "What if I want something simpler?" she asked quietly. The room went silent. Claudia's assistants exchanged glances. Even the florist paused in her arrangement. "Simpler?" Claudia repeated, as if Victoria had suggested getting married in a trash bag. "I don't want a circus. I want—" Victoria trailed off, not sure what she wanted. To run? To disappear? To wake up and discover this was all a nightmare? Something small, intimate, just less. "I'll speak with Mr. Volkov." "You don't need to speak with Mr. Volkov." Alexander's voice cut through the room like a blade. Victoria's heart jumped. She hadn't heard him enter. He stood in the doorway, dressed for business in another perfect suit, radiating that controlled danger that seemed as natural to him as breathing. "Miss Rothschild." He nodded to Claudia. "Give us the room, please." The wedding team evacuated with impressive speed, taking their samples and flowers and leaving Victoria alone with her fiancé. The silence stretched taut between them. "You don't want a large wedding," Alexander said. "Not a question. Does it matter what I want?" He moved into the room with that predatory grace, picking up one of the dress sketches. "These are excessive." Victoria blinked, surprised. "You agree?" "I grew up poor, Victoria. Very poor. In Moscow, before my family built what we have now." He set down the sketch, those gray eyes finding hers. "I know what it looks like when people spend money to prove they have it. I don't need to prove anything." "Then why the 300-person wedding? Why the spectacle?" "Because appearances matter in my world. People need to see that you're protected, that you're mine, that anyone who touches you answers to me, Something dark flickered in his expression. But the dress, the flowers, the details, those can be what you want. Tell Claudia to scale it back. Victoria studied him, trying to understand. Why would you care what I want? Because you have to walk down that aisle, Victoria. You have to stand beside me and say vows in front of 300 people who will be watching for any sign of hesitation, any hint that this marriage isn't. He paused, choosing his words. Real. If you're miserable, they'll see it, and that defeats the purpose. So this is still about appearances. Everything is about appearances. He moved closer, and Victoria fought the urge to step back. But that doesn't mean you have to suffer through every detail. Choose a dress you can tolerate. Pick flowers you don't hate. Make it bearable. There was something almost considerate in the offer, as if beneath the cold exterior, Alexander Volkov might actually care about more than just his investment. Or maybe that was just another manipulation, another way to make her compliant. Fine, Victoria said. I'll tell Claudia I want something simpler. Good. He turned to leave, then paused. I'm flying to Moscow this afternoon. Business. I'll be gone for 3 days. Should I pretend to miss you? The corner of his mouth lifted. Not quite a smile, but close. You should enjoy the peace and quiet. When I return, we have a charity gala to attend. Together. Your first public appearance as my fiancée. Victoria's stomach dropped. I'm not ready for that. You don't have a choice. His voice softened slightly. The stylist will help you. Mrs. Petrova will brief you on who to expect. And Victoria? He met her eyes. Don't try to run while I'm gone. I'll know. Then he was gone, leaving behind only the scent of his cologne and the suffocating weight of his surveillance. The next 3 days passed in a strange limbo. Without Alexander's presence, the mansion felt less like a prison and more like a museum. Beautiful, empty, echoing. Victoria spent her time exploring the house, discovering libraries and art collections and rooms that looked like no one had used them in years. She also discovered the security system. It was subtle but pervasive. Cameras in every public space. Guards patrolling the grounds. The driver who accompanied her on the one shopping trip she attempted. A polite, silent man who was definitely armed. Alexander had meant what he said. He would know if she tried to run. On the second day, Victoria called her sister. Oh my God, Vic. Emma's voice was bright with excitement. I saw the announcement in the Times. You're engaged to Alexander Volkov. Why didn't you tell me you were seeing someone? Victoria closed her eyes, sitting in the window seat of her suite. Outside, rain fell on the perfect gardens. It happened quickly. I'll say, he's gorgeous. I Googled him. And rich. Like, stupid rich. Vic, this is amazing. Mom is beside herself with excitement. She's already talking about what to wear to the wedding. That's great. The lie tasted like ash. Are you okay? You sound weird. For a moment, Victoria almost told her, almost explained that this wasn't a fairy tale, that she'd been sold like property, that the gorgeous, stupid rich man Emma was gushing about had blackmailed their father into this arrangement. But what good would it do? Emma was happy, safe, able to finish university, without worrying about money or scandal. That was worth the lie. I'm fine, Victoria said, just overwhelmed. It's all happening so fast. Well, I'm coming over as soon as term ends. I want to hear everything, all the romantic details. They talked for another 10 minutes before Victoria made an excuse to hang up. Afterward, she sat in the silence of her gilded cage and wondered if this was what the rest of her life would be, lying to the people she loved, pretending to be happy, slowly suffocating under the weight of Alexander Volkov's control. On the third day, he returned. Victoria was in the library, a 2-story room lined with books in multiple languages. When she heard the car pull up, her heart rate spiked involuntarily. She'd gotten used to his absence, to the illusion of freedom. Now reality was walking back through the door. She found him in his study an hour later, when Mrs. Petrova summoned her for dinner. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes, tension in his shoulders, but still perfectly controlled. Victoria. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Sit. She remained standing. I'm not a dog. No, you're my fiancé. Which means we need to discuss Saturday night. He pulled out a folder, opened it. The Thornberry Foundation Gala. 500 guests, half of them people who want to see me fail. You'll need to be prepared. Prepared for what? Questions. Scrutiny. People trying to determine if this marriage is legitimate or a convenience. He slid a document across the desk, a dossier of names and faces. These are the key players. Memorize them. Their names, their positions, their relationships to me and to each other. Victoria picked up the dossier, flipping through pages of photographs and biographical notes. Politicians, businessmen, society matrons, all of them connected Alexander's world in various ways. This is homework, she said flatly. This is survival. He leaned back in his chair. My enemies will be watching you, Victoria, looking for weakness, looking for proof that you're a bought bride instead of a willing one. You need to be convincing. And how do I do that? By staying close to me, by smiling when appropriate, by letting me touch you without flinching. His eyes locked on hers. By playing the part of a woman in love. The word love in his mouth sounded obscene. I'm not an actress. Then learn quickly. He stood, moving around the desk until he was too close, invading her space. The gala is in 3 days. Until then, we practice. Practice what? Being a couple. He reached out slowly, telegraphing the movement, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Victoria's breath caught. His touch was gentle, surprisingly so, but it still felt like ownership. People will expect certain familiarity between us. We need to make it look natural. This will never look natural. It will if you stop looking at me like I'm about to murder you. His hand lingered at her jaw, thumb brushing her cheek. I'm not going to hurt you, Victoria, despite what you think of me. You've already hurt me. You're forcing me into a marriage I don't want. To save your family. Yes, we've established this. His hand dropped away, but he didn't step back. But I'm not a brute, Victoria. I don't enjoy your suffering. If anything, it's inconvenient. How romantic. I told you, I'm not a romantic man. Something shifted in his expression, a crack in the cold facade. But I keep my promises, and I promise you'll be safe. That means teaching you how to navigate my world without getting eaten alive. Victoria wanted to hate him, wanted to rage and fight and refuse. But standing there, seeing the exhaustion in his eyes, the barely visible humanity beneath the monster's mask, she felt something shift. Not forgiveness, not even understanding, but maybe, for the first time, a glimpse of the man beneath the blackmailer. Fine, she said quietly. I'll learn your names. I'll smile at your gala. I'll play the perfect bride. Not perfect. Alexander's smile was sharp, just convincing. There's a difference. He returned to his desk, dismissing her with his attention. But as Victoria left, she felt his eyes on her back, watching, always watching, a predator tracking prey. 3 days until the gala. 20 days until the wedding. And somewhere in the space between fear and fascination, Victoria was beginning to realize that surviving Alexander Volkov might be more complicated than she thought, because the monster was starting to look almost human, and that, perhaps, was the most dangerous thing of all. Chapter 3, The Masquerade. The dress was a weapon. Victoria understood that now, standing in front of the mirror while the stylist made final adjustments. Midnight blue silk that clung to every curve before flowing to the floor. A neckline that was modest but suggested sin. Diamonds at her throat, borrowed from Alexander's collection, worth more than most houses. She looked like someone else. Someone powerful. Someone who belonged on Alexander Volkov's arm. Perfect, the stylist breathed. He won't be able to take his eyes off you. Victoria wasn't sure if that was a promise or a threat. Downstairs, Alexander was waiting in the entrance hall, checking his phone with the distracted air of a man conducting business, even while preparing for a social event. When he heard her heels on the marble stairs, he looked up. Something flickered in those gray eyes. Surprise, maybe, or hunger. You look. He paused, searching for words. Alexander Volkov, who always knew exactly what to say, seemed momentarily at a loss. Acceptable. Victoria almost smiled despite herself. High praise. You'll do. But the way his gaze traveled over her, slow, thorough, possessive, suggested he thought considerably more than that. He offered his arm. Ready? Does it matter? Not particularly. His smile was sharp. But we're doing this regardless. Remember, stay close, smile when appropriate, and for God's sake, don't flinch when I touch you. The wolves will be circling tonight. The drive to Thornbury House took 40 minutes through London traffic. Alexander spent most of it on phone calls in Russian, his voice taking on harder edges, the elegant British accent falling away to reveal something more dangerous beneath. Victoria watched the city pass by outside her window and tried to calm her racing heart. She'd been at charity galas before. Her family had money once, had moved in these circles. But that was when she'd had power, choice, freedom. Tonight, she was walking into a room full of predators wearing Alexander Volkov's mark like a collar. Thornbury House was everything Claudia had promised, an 18th century estate lit up like a palace, with cars queuing to deposit London's elite at the entrance. Photographers lined the red carpet, cameras flashing like lightning. Through the car window, Victoria could see the guests arriving. Women in couture, men in tuxedos. Everyone playing their part in the eternal theater of wealth and power. Listen to me? Alexander's voice pulled her attention back. He'd ended his call, was watching her with that intense focus that made her feel like a specimen under glass. There will be people here tonight who want to see me fail, who want proof that I'm still just a Russian thug pretending to be civilized. You are my proof that I'm not. No pressure, then. I'm serious, Victoria. He reached out, fingers gentle on her jaw, turning her to face him. These people are dangerous in ways you don't understand. They won't threaten you with guns. They'll threaten you with rumors, whispers, social destruction. And if they sense weakness, they will attack. So what do you want me to do? Be strong. Be confident. Be mine. His thumb brushed across her lower lip, an intimate gesture that sent unwanted heat through her body. Can you do that? She wanted to say no, wanted to refuse. But looking into his eyes, seeing the genuine concern there, not for himself but for her, Victoria found herself nodding. Good girl. He released her as the car door opened. Show time. The moment they stepped onto the red carpet, the world exploded into light and sound. Photographers shouted Alexander's name. Cameras flashed. Victoria felt his hand settle on her lower back, warm, possessive, anchoring her to his side as they moved through the chaos. Mr. Volkov, who's your companion? Alexander, look this way. Is it true you're engaged? Alexander stopped, turned to face the cameras with Victoria at his side. His smile was pure calculation, warm enough to seem genuine, cold enough to remind everyone exactly who they were dealing with. Gentlemen, ladies, may I introduce my fiancée, Victoria Ashford. We're very happy to share our engagement with you tonight. He leaned down, pressed a kiss to her temple. Brief, public, perfect. Victoria forced herself not to tense, to lean into him slightly, to play the role of a woman in love. The cameras went wild. Inside, Thornbury House was a spectacle of old money and new power. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, champagne flowing like water. The guests were a who's who of British society. Politicians, business magnates, aristocrats who'd managed to hold on to their fortunes through various wars and economic disasters. And watching Victoria like she was dinner was every single one of them. Alexander, a woman in red, swept toward them. 50s, diamonds, the kind of smile that could cut glass. Darling, it's been too long. And this must be the famous Victoria. How charming. Lady Pemberton. Alexander's voice was smooth as silk. May I introduce? Yes, Victoria Ashford. I know the family, of course. Your father is Richard Ashford. The woman's smile sharpened. He used to have quite the reputation. Before the troubles. The implication was clear. I know what you are. I know why you're here. My father speaks highly of you as well, Victoria said, voice steady despite the rage simmering in her chest. Lady Pemberton's eyes flashed, recognizing the lie, appreciating the audacity. How diplomatic. You'll fit right in with Alexander. He's always been so strategic about his relationships. If you'll excuse us. Alexander's hand tightened on Victoria's waist, steering her away before she could respond. Vulture, he muttered once they were out of earshot. She's been trying to marry her daughter off to me for 3 years. Should I be jealous? The words came out more bitter than she'd intended. Of Lady Pemberton's bridge troll daughter? Hardly. Alexander snagged 2 champagne flutes from a passing waiter, handed her one, though I appreciate the concern. I'm not concerned. I'm playing a role, remember? Of course. But something in his expression suggested he didn't entirely believe her. The next hour was a gauntlet. Alexander introduced her to what felt like hundreds of people, each one measuring her, judging her, trying to determine if she was worthy of Alexander Volkov or just another gold digger who'd gotten lucky. Victoria smiled until her face hurt, made polite conversation, and let Alexander's hand remain on her waist like a brand. She was starting to understand what he'd meant about performances. Every interaction was a calculation, every smile a weapon, every word chosen for maximum impact with minimum vulnerability. This wasn't a party. It was warfare in evening wear. "You're doing well," Alexander murmured during a brief respite. They stood near the windows overlooking the gardens, temporarily alone. Better than I expected. Thanks for the vote of confidence. I mean it. He turned to face her, and for once, there was something almost genuine in his expression. I know this isn't easy, but you're handling it like you were born to it. Maybe I was, before my father gambled away our place in this world. Your father's failures aren't yours, Victoria. His hand came up, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, that same gesture from the other night, but gentler now, more real. You belong here, with or without him, with or without me. The unexpected kindness made her throat tight. Before she could respond, a voice cut to the moment like a knife. Volkov. The man who approached was everything Alexander wasn't. Fair where Alexander was dark, soft where Alexander was hard, smiling where Alexander's face had gone carefully blank. But there was something in his blue eyes that made Victoria's skin crawl. Dmitri. Alexander's voice was ice. I didn't realize you were invited. I go where I please. The man, Dmitri, let his gaze slide over Victoria with open assessment. And this must be the new acquisition, the Ashford girl. Tell me, Dorothea, does he keep you in a cage? Or do you come willingly to the wolf's den? Victoria felt Alexander tense beside her, violence coiling in his shoulders. Watch your mouth, Sokolov. Or what? You'll make me disappear like the others? Dmitri's smile widened. Such a savage, Alexander. You can buy the suits, attend the parties, marry the English rose, but we both know what you really are, what you'll always be. The temperature around them seemed to drop 10 degrees. Other guests were starting to notice. Conversations dying as people sensed the confrontation. Victoria. Alexander's voice was deadly calm. Go wait by the bar. Now. But now. Not a request. A command. Every instinct screamed at her to stay, to not leave him alone with this Dmitri person who radiated danger. But Alexander's hand on her waist tightened once, a warning, before releasing her. Victoria walked toward the bar on shaking legs, feeling eyes follow her. Behind her, she heard Alexander's voice, low and lethal. You have 3 seconds to leave before I forget we're in public. She glanced back just in time to see Dmitri leaning close, say something that made Alexander's expression turn murderous. Then security was there, Alexander's men. She realized, not the venues, escorting Dmitri toward the exit with quiet efficiency. Alexander stood alone for a moment, hands clenched, jaw tight. Then he seemed to collect himself, smoothing the mask back into place before turning to find her. We're leaving. He was at her side in 3 strides, taking her arm. What was that about? Nothing that concerns you. He threatened you. He threatened you. Alexander's eyes were dark, with barely contained rage. Which means he threatened what's mine. Come, now. They left through a side exit, avoiding the crowds and cameras. The car was waiting. Always waiting, Victoria realized. Always ready for Alexander to need an escape route. Inside the vehicle's privacy, Alexander exhaled slowly, regaining control. Victoria watched him, seeing the violence still simmering beneath the surface. Who was he? She asked quietly. Someone from my past. Someone I thought I'd left behind. He looked at her, and for the first time, she saw genuine fear in his eyes. Not for himself. For her. This is what I meant about my world being dangerous. Victoria, Dmitry Sokolov is... He's what I used to be before I decided to become legitimate. He doesn't like that I've changed. That I'm trying to build something different. So he threatens me to get to you. Yes. The word was heavy with regret. I'm sorry. I should have anticipated he might be here. Should have protected you better. Victoria found herself reaching out, touching his hand. I'm fine. He didn't hurt me. Alexander stared at where her hand rested on his, as if he couldn't quite believe she was touching him voluntarily. Tonight proved something, he said quietly. My enemies will use you against me, which means I need to protect you. Really protect you. Meaning we move the wedding up 2 weeks instead of 3. The sooner you're legally mine, the sooner my full protection extends to you. The sooner anyone who touches you knows they're declaring war on me directly. You want to marry me sooner because some man threatened me at a party? I want to marry you sooner because the moment Dmitry saw you, he saw a weakness, a vulnerability, and I won't give him or anyone else time to exploit it. His hand turned, fingers lacing through hers. I know you hate this. Hate me, but I meant what I said, Victoria. You're mine to protect now, and I protect what's mine. The possessiveness should have terrified her, should have made her pull away. Instead, Victoria found herself squeezing his hand back. 2 weeks then. 2 weeks. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. I'm sorry, Mishka. I know this isn't what you wanted. What does that mean? Mishka, a ghost of a smile, touched his lips. Little mouse, small but brave, surviving in the wolf's den. I'm not a mouse. No. His eyes held hers. You're stronger than that. Tonight proved it. The way you handled those vultures, the way you stood your ground with Dmitry watching. He shook his head. You're going to be formidable, Victoria Ashford, once you learn to stop being afraid of your own power. The car pulled up to the mansion. Alexander helped her out, his hand lingering on hers a moment longer than necessary. Inside, the house was quiet. Staff dismissed for the evening, leaving them alone in the vast space. Good night, Victoria said at the base of the stairs. Victoria. Alexander's voice stopped her. Thank you for tonight, for trying. She looked back at him. This dangerous man who'd bought her like property, who was slowly revealing himself to be more complicated than she'd expected. I did it for my family, not for you. I know. His smile was sad, but thank you anyway. Victoria climbed the stairs to her gilded cage, feeling his eyes on her the whole way. Inside her suite, she locked the door and leaned against it, heart racing. 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, she would be Mrs. Alexander Volkov. And somewhere between the fear and the anger, she was starting to realize that surviving him might mean understanding him, might mean seeing past the monster to the man beneath, the man who called her his little mouse and looked at her like she was something precious instead of property, the man who was slowly, terrifyingly, becoming more than just her captor. Chapter 4, Behind the Mask. The nightmare came 3 nights before the wedding. Victoria woke to screaming, raw, guttural, the sound of someone in agony. For a disoriented moment, she thought it was her own voice. Then she realized it was coming from the east wing, from Alexander's rooms. She should have stayed in bed, should have ignored it. Whatever demons haunted Alexander Volkov weren't her concern, but her feet were already moving, carrying her down the dark corridor in nothing but her silk nightgown, following the sounds of distress. The mansion was silent, except for his screams. The staff either dismissed for the night or trained to ignore their employer's nightmares. His door was unlocked. Victoria pushed it open. The bedroom was massive, minimalist, all dark wood and darker colors. And in the center, tangled in black sheets, Alexander fought invisible enemies. His chest was bare, skin slick with sweat, muscles rigid with tension. Words tumbled from his lips in Russian. Please, curses, names Victoria didn't recognize. Alexander. She approached the bed cautiously, the way you'd approach a wounded animal. Alexander, wake up. His hand shot out, catching her wrist with bruising force. His eyes snapped open, wild, unseeing, still trapped in whatever hell his mind had conjured. For a heartbeat, Victoria saw murder in those gray depths. It's me, she said quickly. It's Victoria. You're safe. You're in London. You're safe. Recognition slowly filtered into his gaze. His grip on her wrist loosened, but didn't release. He stared at her like he couldn't quite believe she was real. Mishka? His voice was wrecked, raw from screaming. What are you doing here? You were having a nightmare. I heard you from my room. Awareness crashed over him, along with something that looked like shame. He released her wrist, sat up, running shaking hands through his sweat-dampened hair. You should go. You shouldn't see me like this. But Victoria was already moving to his bathroom, finding a towel, wetting it with cool water. When she returned, Alexander watched her with wary confusion as she sat on the edge of his bed and pressed a cool cloth to his forehead. What are you doing? He asked. Taking care of you. Be quiet and let me. For once, he obeyed. Victoria wiped the sweat from his face, his neck, noting the scar she'd never seen before. A pucker mark on his shoulder that looked like a bullet wound. Thin lines across his ribs that could only be knife cuts. His body was a map of violence, each scar a story she didn't know. How often do you have nightmares? She asked quietly. Often enough. He closed his eyes as she pressed the cloth to his neck. They've been worse since the engagement, since Dmitri showed up. What do you dream about? Things I've done. Things that were done to me. Take your pick. I have a full catalog of horrors to choose from. His laugh was bitter. I told you, Victoria. I'm not a good man. The nightmares are just my conscience reminding me of that fact. Victoria set aside the towel, studying him in the dim light. Without the armor of his suits, the cold control he wore like a shield, Alexander looked younger, more human, vulnerable in a way she'd never expected. Tell me, she said. Tell me what haunts you. Why would you want to know? Because in 2 days, I'm going to be your wife. And I'd rather marry a man than a monster. So, tell me, Alexander. Help me understand. He was silent for so long she thought he'd refuse. Then he exhaled slowly and began to speak. I grew up in Moscow. Not the nice parts. The parts where people disappear and no one asks questions. My father was a low-level enforcer for the Sokolov family. Dmitri's father, actually, we were nothing, less than nothing. His hands clenched on the sheets. When I was 12, my father made a mistake. Stole from the Sokolovs. The punishment for theft was death. Victoria's breath caught. They killed him. They killed my mother. In front of me and my younger brother, Nikolai. Made my father watch. Then they gave my father a choice, work off the dead as their slave, or watch them kill his sons too. Alexander's voice was flat, emotionless, but his hands trembled. He chose the debt. And for the next 6 years, I watched my father break himself working for the men who'd murder my mother, until the work killed him too. Alexander, Victoria reached for his hand, without thinking. He stared at their joined fingers, like he'd forgotten what comfort looked like. When my father died, the debt transferred to me, 18 years old, responsible for my 15-year-old brother, owing the Sokolovs everything we'd ever earned. So I did what I had to do. I became exactly what they wanted, an enforcer, a collector, a man who made problems disappear. I was good at it, too good, and I hated every second. But you got out. I got smart. Something fierce entered his expression. I learned their business inside and out, started making connections, building my own network. And then, when I was 25, I stole everything I could from the Sokolovs and disappeared. Came to London. Used their money to build something legitimate. Something clean. Not that clean, Victoria said quietly. You blackmailed my father into this marriage. No. His eyes met hers. I gave your father an option. Pay his debt, or give me away into legitimate British society. He chose you. But I didn't force him to gamble away his fortune, Victoria. I didn't create his debt. I just collected on it. That's still not clean. I never said I was redeemed. Just that I'm trying. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. The nightmares of my past reminded me that I can't ever really escape what I was. What I did. The people I hurt. Victoria thought about the screams she'd heard. The terror in his voice. Who do you see? In the nightmares. My mother, my father, my brother. His voice cracked on the last word. Nikolai died 3 years ago. Dmitri Sokolov found him, punished him for my betrayal. I wasn't there to protect him. I was here, building my empire, thinking I'd made it out, and they killed him for my sins. The grief in his voice was raw, real, devastating. Victoria found herself moving closer, her free hand coming up to cup his jaw. That wasn't your fault, wasn't it? I'm the one who stole from them. I'm the one who ran. Nikolai paid my price. Dmitri Sokolov pulled the trigger. Not you. I might as well have. Alexander leaned into her touch, eyes closed. Every person I've hurt, every life I've destroyed in the name of survival or ambition, they all visit me in my sleep. And there's no absolution for men like me, Victoria. Just an endless accounting of debts I can never repay. In that moment, Victoria understood something fundamental. Alexander Volkov wasn't a monster pretending to be human. He was a man who'd been forced to become a monster and was desperately trying to find his way back. Is that why you're trying to become legitimate? She asked. Why you wanted a respectable British wife? You're trying to atone. I'm trying to build something that matters. Something that isn't built on blood and fear. He opened his eyes, and the vulnerability there stole her breath. When I die, and in my line of work, that could be any day, I want to leave something good behind. Something clean. I want to prove that I'm more than what the Sokolovs made me. And I'm part of that proof. You were supposed to be, yes, a transaction. A final piece of my transformation. His hand came up, covering hers where it rested on his jaw. But you're not. You're not a transaction anymore, Victoria. You're... What? She whispered. You're the first person in years who see me fall apart and didn't run, who touched me gently instead of flinching away. His eyes searched hers. You're supposed to hate me. Why don't you hate me? Victoria didn't have an answer. A month ago, even a week ago, she would have said she did hate him. But sitting here in the darkness, seeing his scars, hearing his pain, feeling the desperate need for absolution radiating off him like heat, she couldn't summon hatred. Only a complicated tangle of emotions she didn't want to examine too closely. I don't know, she admitted. I should. You blackmailed me, bought me, trapped me. But I'm starting to see that you're not the villain of this story. You're just... She paused, searching for the right words. Broken. Like me. Like my family. We're all just broken people trying to survive. Alexander stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, carefully, he pulled her closer until she was pressed against his chest, his arms wrapping around her. Not possessive, not demanding, just holding. I promise you, he murmured into her hair, I will keep you safe. Whatever it costs, whatever I have to do, Dmitri won't touch you. No one will. You're mine to protect now. Victoria should have pulled away, should have maintained distance, kept the walls up. Instead, she let herself lean into his warmth, feeling his heart beat against her cheek. Tell me about Nikolai, she said quietly. What was he like? And Alexander did. For the next hour, as the London night turned toward dawn, he told her about his younger brother, about teaching him to play chess, about protecting him from their father's creditors, about the plans they'd had to escape together. He told her about Nikolai's laugh, his terrible jokes, his dream of becoming a doctor. He told her, and Victoria listened, and somewhere in the sharing of grief, something shifted between them. When Alexander finally stopped talking, exhaustion evident in every line of his body, Victoria realized she was lying beside him in his bed, his arms still around her, his breathing starting to even out towards sleep. "Stay," he murmured. "Please, just for tonight. I sleep better when you're here." She should have said no, should have returned to her own room, maintained the boundaries that were already dissolving too fast. "Just for tonight," she agreed. Alexander's arms tightened around her, his face buried in her hair. Within minutes, his breathing deepened into sleep. Real sleep, without the screaming, without the nightmares. Victoria lay awake longer, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of his body against hers, the warmth of his skin, the steady rhythm of his heart. She thought about monsters and men, about debts and redemption, about the complicated dance they were performing toward an inevitable wedding. 2 days. In 2 days, she would marry Alexander Volkov. And lying there in his arms, feeling his nightmares quiet because she was there, Victoria realized something terrifying. She was starting to want to, not because she had to, not because her family needed her to, but because somewhere in the darkness, the monster had shown her his humanity, and she'd found something worth saving. She pressed her lips to his shoulder, the scarred one, the one that had taken a bullet, in a kiss that was comfort and promise and surrender all at once. Alexander sighed in his sleep, pulling her closer, and for the first time since this nightmare began, Victoria felt something that might eventually become peace. Chapter 5. The Vows. Victoria woke alone in Alexander's bed, sunlight streaming through windows she didn't recognize. For a disoriented moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then memory crashed back. The nightmares, the confessions, the way he'd held her like she was something precious, the way she'd kissed the scars and stayed. The space beside her was cold. He'd been gone for hours. Today was her wedding day. She found a note on the pillow, Alexander's angular handwriting stark against cream paper. Asterisk, thank you for last night, for staying, for listening. I don't deserve your kindness, Mishka, but I'm selfish enough to take it anyway. I'll see you at the altar. A asterisk. Victoria pressed the note to her chest, emotions warring inside her. This was supposed to be simple. A forced marriage, a business transaction, surviving until she could find a way out. But Alexander had made it complicated by being human, by showing her his scars and trusting her with his grief, by making her want to save him almost as much as she wanted to save herself. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Mrs. Petrova entered, expression carefully neutral despite finding Victoria in Alexander's bed. "Miss Ashford, your stylists have arrived, and your sister is downstairs, quite excited to see you. Emma." God! She'd almost forgotten Emma was coming for the wedding. Victoria showered quickly in Alexander's bathroom, all black marble and masculine efficiency, then returned to her own suite where chaos had taken up residence. The room was filled with people, hairstylists, makeup artists, a photographer documenting every moment. And in the center of it all, bouncing with excitement, was Emma. "Vic!" Her sister launched herself into Victoria's arms. "Oh my God, you're getting married. Today, to Alexander Volkov. I still can't believe it. Mom is beside herself. She's been crying all morning. Happy tears. Obviously. This is so romantic. Romantic. The word sat wrong in Victoria's mouth. This wasn't romance. It was survival that had accidentally stumbled into something more complicated. How are you not freaking out?" Emma continued, pulling back to study Victoria's face. "I'd be a wreck. But you look so calm. So happy." Was she happy? Victoria didn't know anymore. Terrified, yes. Confused, absolutely. But somewhere underneath it all, there was something that might eventually become happiness, if she was brave enough to reach for it. "I'm nervous," Victoria admitted. "But it feels right." It was the first true thing she'd said to her sister in weeks. The next 3 hours were a blur of preparations. Victoria sat while talented hands transformed her into a bride. Her hair was swept up in an elegant twist, a few loose curls framing her face. Makeup was applied with expert precision, dramatic enough for the cameras, subtle enough to still look like herself. And then came the dress. She'd chosen it 2 weeks ago, during one of Claudia's whirlwind planning sessions. Not the elaborate confection the wedding planner had pushed, but something simpler, ivory silk that fell in clean lines from her shoulders to the floor. Delicate lace at the neckline and sleeves. No train, no crystal embellishments, no excessive drama. Just elegance, simplicity, herself. When Victoria looked in the mirror, she barely recognized a woman staring back. She looked like a bride, like someone who'd chosen this, wanted this, was walking toward her future instead of being dragged into it. "You look beautiful," Emma whispered, tears in her eyes. "Alexander's going to lose his mind when he sees you." Victoria thought about him seeing her last night, tangled in sheets, hair wild, wearing nothing but a nightgown. Thought about the way he looked at her then, like she was salvation instead of property. "Let's hope so," she murmured. St. George's Chapel was everything Alexander had promised. Historic, beautiful, intimidating. Victoria stood in the entrance, arm linked through her father's, staring down an aisle that seemed impossibly long. 300 guests filled the pews, society's elite business magnates, politicians, all of them here to witness Alexander Volkov claim his British bride, to witness him become legitimate. Victoria. Her father's voice was shaking. He looked older than he had a month ago, worn down by guilt and shame. "I'm sorry for all of this, for what I've done to you. Not now, Father." She kept her voice low, aware of the eyes on them. "We'll talk after. I just want you to know, if there was any other way." There wasn't, and it doesn't matter anymore. She looked at him, saw the broken man who'd sold his daughter to save himself. She should hate him. Part of her did. But mostly she just felt tired. Let's just get through this. The music swelled, traditional, beautiful, the sound of beginnings instead of endings. The guests rose, and Victoria began the long walk toward her future. She saw her mother in the front row, crying behind a lace handkerchief, saw Emma beaming with excitement, saw Lady Pemberton and all the other vultures in the gala, watching with calculating eyes, saw Alexander's business associates, his security team, the witnesses to his transformation, and then she saw him. Alexander stood at the altar in a black tuxedo that looked like it had been designed specifically to make women forget how to breathe. But it wasn't the clothes that stole Victoria's attention. It was his face, the way his eyes locked on her the moment she appeared, the way his expression shifted from his usual cold control to something raw and unguarded. Wonder, reverence, fear, as if he couldn't quite believe she was real, that she was walking toward him instead of running away. Victoria's father delivered her to the altar with trembling hands, passing her to Alexander like a transaction being completed. But when Alexander took her hand, his touch was gentle, warm. His thumb brushed across her knuckles in a gesture that had become familiar over the past few days. "You're beautiful," he murmured, too low for anyone else to hear. "Breathtaking." "You're not supposed to see the bride before the wedding," she whispered back. "I saw you this morning, in my bed, wearing nothing but—" He stopped, something dark and heated flashing in his eyes. Perhaps we shouldn't discuss that in church. Despite everything, Victoria almost smiled. The ceremony began. The officiant spoke about love and commitment and marriage as a sacred bond. Victoria barely heard the words. She was too focused on Alexander's hand holding hers, the steady pressure anchoring her, on the way he watched her like she was the only person in the room. "Do you, Alexander Dmitrievich Volkov, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do you part?" "I do." Alexander's voice was steady, certain, carrying to the chapel like a vow carved in stone. "And do you, Victoria Margaret Ashford, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do you part?" This was it, her last chance to refuse, to walk away, Damn the consequences. Choose freedom over this complicated man with his nightmares and scars and desperate need for redemption. Victoria looked into Alexander's gray eyes and saw her future written there. Not simple, not easy, but maybe, just maybe, worth fighting for. I do. Something shifted in Alexander's expression. Relief, triumph, possession, all of it wrapped together in a look that made her knees weak. The rings, please. Alexander's best man, Victor, his head of security, a mountain of man with dead eyes, produced 2 platinum bands. Alexander took Victoria's hand, slid the ring onto her finger. It settled beside the engagement ring like it had always belonged there. Then it was her turn. Victoria took Alexander's hand, noting the scars across his knuckles, the calluses that spoke of violence, and slid the band onto his finger, marking him as hers the way he'd marked her. I now pronounce you husband and wife. The officiant smiled benevolently. You may kiss your bride. Alexander's hand came up, cupping Victoria's jaw with a gentleness that contradicted everything people believed about him. He gave her a moment, one breath, too, to refuse, to pull away. Instead, Victoria leaned in. The kiss was soft, chaste, even appropriate for the church and the audience. But underneath the surface performance was something else entirely. Heat and promise, and the memory of last night, of vulnerability shared in darkness, of walls crumbling between them. When they pulled apart, Alexander's eyes were dark with want. Mine, he breathed, too quiet for anyone but her to hear. Finally mine. Ours, Victoria corrected softly. We're each other's now. His smile was real this time. Small but genuine. Yes, we are. They turned to face the congregation, husband and wife, monster and savior. 2 broken people who'd stumbled into something that might eventually become whole. The applause was thunderous. The reception at Thornbury House was everything Claudia had promised. Elegant, excessive, perfect. Victoria and Alexander moved through it like dancers in a choreographed performance. First dance, cake cutting, speeches that were 90% lies and 10% truth. But underneath the performance was reality. Alexander's hand never left her waist. His attention never strayed far from her face. When Lady Pemberton made a cutting comment about new money and old names, Alexander's response was silk over steel. Polite enough for public consumption, threatening enough that the woman paled and excused herself. You didn't have to do that, Victoria said once they were alone for a moment. Yes, I did. His arm tightened around her waist. You're my wife now, Victoria. Anyone who disrespects you disrespects me. I won't tolerate it. So possessive, so protective. He turned her to face him. There's a difference. I don't own you, Mishka, but I will defend you. Always. Even from yourself? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Alexander went still. What do you mean? You told me you're not a good man, that you've hurt people. But last night, holding me, comforting me after your nightmare. Victoria paused, choosing her words carefully. That wasn't a bad man, Alexander. That was someone trying to be better. Trying and succeeding are different things. Then let me help you. She placed her hand over his heart, felt it racing beneath her palm. You said you wanted redemption. Let this marriage be part of that. Not a transaction, not a performance. Something real. Victoria. His voice was rough with emotion he was trying to contain. You don't know what you're offering. I'm offering a chance, for both of us, to make this more than what it started as. And if I fail, if the monster comes back, then I'll remind you who you really are. She went up on her toes, pressed a kiss to his jaw. You're not the Sokolovs, Alexander. You're not your past. You're the man who held me through the night, because you sleep better when I'm there. That's who you are. That's who I'm choosing. For a moment, Alexander looked like he might break, like the careful control he wore might shatter, revealing all the vulnerability underneath. Then he pulled her close, buried his face in her hair, and held her like a drowning man clutching salvation. I don't deserve you, he whispered. But God help me. I'm going to try to earn you anyway. Good. Victoria held him just as tightly. Because you're stuck with me now. For better or worse, remember? For better or worse. His laugh was shaky. I think we've already survived the worst, Mishka. Maybe now comes a better. The music changed, something slow and romantic. Alexander pulled back just enough to meet her eyes, a question in his gaze. Victoria took his hand, let him lead her back to the dance floor. As they swayed together beneath crystal chandeliers, surrounded by hundreds of people who thought they understood this marriage, Victoria felt something shift inside her. This started as a cage, a trap, a debt being paid. But somewhere between the nightmares and the confessions, between his scars and her kindness, it had become something else. A choice, a chance, a fragile, complicated beginning. Thank you, Alexander murmured against her ear, for saying yes, for staying, for giving me a chance to be better than I was. Victoria leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong beneath her cheek. Thank you for being worth it. They danced until the music faded, and when the reception finally ended, when the guests departed and the performance was over, Alexander took her hand and led her toward the car that would take them home. Not to separate wings, not to separate beds. Home, together. Are you ready? He asked softly. For tonight? For everything. Victoria thought about his words from their first dinner. When we share a bed, it will be because you choose it. She was choosing it now. Not because she had to, not because the marriage demanded it, but because somewhere in the darkness, she'd found something worth reaching for. Yes, she said simply. I'm ready. Alexander's eyes darkened with heat and promise, and something that might eventually become love. Then let's go home, Mrs. Volkov. Mrs. Volkov. For the first time, the name didn't feel like a prison sentence. It felt like a beginning. Chapter 6. The Fire and the Reckoning. The ride home was silent, but not uncomfortable. Alexander's hand rested on Victoria's thigh, warm, possessive, his thumb tracing idle circles through the silk of her wedding dress. She'd removed her veil in the car, unpinned some of her hair, and now it fell in loose waves around her shoulders. Nervous? He asked as they pulled through the gates of the Kensington mansion. Terrified, she admitted, but not for the reasons you think. His hand stilled. Were you afraid of? That this feeling, whatever this is between us, isn't real. That tomorrow morning you'll wake up and remember I'm just a woman you bought to legitimize your empire. That the man I saw last night was an illusion. Alexander turned to face her fully, his gray eyes intense in the dim light of the car. Look at me, Victoria. Really look at me. She did. Saw the vulnerability beneath his controlled exterior, the hope and fear warring in his expression. The desperate need to be seen as more than what he'd been forced to become. That man you saw last night, the one having nightmares, the one who told you about Nikolai, that's the realest version of me that exists. Everything else is armor. But with you, he cupped her face gently. With you, I don't want to wear armor. I want to be the man who deserves you. You already are, Victoria whispered. You just don't believe it yet. The car stopped. Victor opened the door, then diplomatically disappeared into the night, leaving them alone. Alexander helped Victoria out, then surprised her by sweeping her into his arms. What are you doing? She clutched his shoulders, laughing despite herself. Carry my bride over the threshold. It's tradition. His smile was almost boyish. I may be a monster, but I'm not completely without romance. He carried her through the mansion's grand entrance, up the sweeping staircase, past her suite in the West Wing, all the way to his rooms. The doors closed behind them with soft finality. Alexander set her down gently, and suddenly the air between them felt charged with possibility and promise, and the weight of what came next. We don't have to, he started. Victoria silenced him with a kiss. It started soft, tentative, a question being asked and answered, but within heartbeats it deepened into something urgent, desperate, months of tension and fear and unexpected feeling pouring out between them. Alexander's hands found her waist, pulling her close. Victoria's fingers tangled in his hair, holding him to her like an anchor. Victoria, he breathed against her lips. Are you sure? I chose you, she said simply. Tonight, tomorrow, however long we have. I'm choosing you, Alexander. Something in his expression cracked. all his careful control splintering beneath the weight of her acceptance. I don't know how to be gentle. I don't know how to. Then we'll learn together. She reached up, began unbuttoning his shirt with trembling fingers. We're both broken. Both try and become something better. Let's figure out together. Alexander caught her hands, brought them to his lips. I want to worship you. Want to show you what you mean to me, what you become to me. Then show me. He undressed her slowly, reverently, each revealed into skin met with gentle touches, and whispered words in Russian that Victoria didn't understand but felt in her bones. The wedding dress pulled at her feet, ivory silk that had marked her transformation from captive to bride, from transaction to choice. She stood before him in nothing but lingerie and moonlight, feeling more exposed than she'd ever been, not just physically, but emotionally. This wasn't duty, wasn't obligation. This was vulnerability offered freely, trust placed in hands that could break her. Beautiful, Alexander breathed, his eyes dark with want. So beautiful it hurts to look at you. Victoria reached for him, began removing his shirt, tracing the scars she'd seen that first night. Bullet wound on his shoulder. Knife cuts across his ribs. A burn mark on his left side. Each one a story of survival, of violence endured and inflicted. These don't define you, she whispered, pressing kisses to each scar. They're part of your story, but they're not all of it. Alexander shuddered beneath her touch, his control fracturing further. When she reached his belt, he caught her hands again, his breathing ragged. If we do this, there's no going back. You'll be mine, truly mine, in every way that matters. I'm already yours. Victoria met his eyes. The question is, are you mine? Always. The word was a vow, a prayer, a promise sealed with a kiss that tasted like forever. From the moment you walked into my study, maybe before. I've been yours, Mishka. I just didn't know it yet. He lifted her again, carried her to bed, that same bed where she found him lost in nightmares just nights ago. But tonight there were no nightmares. Only them, only this, only the desperate need to be closer, to erase every boundary between them. What followed was neither gentle nor rough, but something in between, urgent and tender, passionate and careful. Alexander worshipped her body with the same intensity he brought to everything else, learning what made her gasp, what made her sigh, what made her forget her own name. And Victoria gave as good as she got, discovering the man beneath the monster, finding the places where his armor was thinnest, where touch could make him tremble, where whispered words could undo him completely. I love you, he said at some point, voice wrecked with emotion. I know I shouldn't. No, it's too soon. But I love you, Victoria. Desperately. Completely. In ways that terrify me. Victoria pulled him closer, feeling tears slip down her cheeks. I love you too. God help me, but I do. They moved together like waves against shore, building and cresting and breaking in perfect rhythm. When release finally came, it was mutual, a shared moment of surrender that left them both shaking, clinging to each other like survivors of a storm. After, they lay tangled in sheets and moonlight, skin to skin, hearts gradually slowing from their frantic pace. Alexander held Victoria like she might disappear, his face buried in her hair, his arms wrapped tight around her. Thank you, he whispered, for giving me this, for giving me you. Victoria pressed a kiss to his chest, directly over his heart. Thank you for being worth the risk. They talked quietly as exhaustion crept in, about nothing and everything, about hopes and fears, about the future they were building together. Alexander told her about his plans to expand the legitimate side of his business, to slowly phase out anything connected to his criminal past. Victoria told him about her dreams of returning to art history, maybe opening a gallery someday. They talked until words gave way to sleep, until Victoria's breathing evened out against Alexander's chest, until he followed her into dreams that, for once, held no nightmares. Only her. Victoria woke to the sound of Alexander's phone, buzzing insistently. Gray dawn light filtered through the windows. Alexander's arm was heavy across her waist, his body warm against her back. Ignore it, he mumbled, pulling her closer. But the phone kept buzzing, and buzzing, and buzzing. With a muttered curse in Russian, Alexander reached for it. Victoria felt his whole body go rigid as he read, Whatever message had come through. "What is it?" she asked, turning to face him. His expression had transformed. All the softness from last night replaced with cold, lethal focus. "Get dressed." "Now." "Alexander, what?" "Now, Victoria." He was already moving, pulling on clothes with efficient speed. "Victor's been trying to reach me. There's been an incident." Fear clutched at Victoria's chest. "What kind of incident?" "Your father's house. Someone broke in last night during the reception. Your mother and sister fine. They weren't there, but the place was ransacked. And they left a message." "What message?" Alexander's jaw clenched. "For me, written on your father's study wall in red paint." He paused, eyes dark with rage. "The bride won't save you, Volkov." The name hit Victoria like a physical blow. "Dmitri?" "Yes." Alexander was already on the phone, barking orders in rapid Russian. He turned back to Victoria, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw genuine fear in his eyes. Not for himself. For her. "This is my fault. I should have anticipated this. Should have protected them better. My family is safe," you said. "They weren't there. This time. But Dimitri's making a point. He can reach the people you love whenever he wants. And the message is clear. Marrying you didn't make me legitimate. It just gave him a bigger target." Victoria's mind raced. "What do we do?" "We end this." Alexander's voice was steel. "I've been trying to handle Dmitri through legal channels, through political pressure, through everything except what I know I should do. But he's not going to stop. Not until one of us is dead." "You're talking about..." "War." "Yes." He moved to the closet, pressed something on the wall. A hidden panel slid open, revealing an arsenal that made Victoria's blood run cold. Guns, ammunition, tactical gear. "I tried to leave this behind. Tried to become someone better. But some debts can only be paid in blood." Victoria crossed him, placed her hand on his arm. "There has to be another way. If you do this, if you go back to being what you were, then I lose everything that matters, including myself." Alexander turned to face her, cupped her face in his hands. "But if I don't do this, I lose you, and that's not acceptable." "You won't lose me. I'm not going anywhere. You don't understand. Dmitri doesn't just want to hurt me. He wants to destroy me, and the best way to destroy me is to take you away. To make me watch you suffer the way I watched Nikolai suffer." His voice cracked. "I can't let that happen, Victoria. I can't lose someone else I love." The raw emotion in his voice broke her heart. This was the cost of loving a man like Alexander Volkov. The constant threat, the ever-present danger, the knowledge that his past would never fully release its grip. But looking at him, this complicated, broken, desperately trying man, Victoria knew she wouldn't walk away. Couldn't, even if survival demanded it. "Then we fight," she said firmly. "Together, not you protecting me while I hide. We're partners now, Alexander. Husband and wife. That means we face this together." "Victoria, you don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying. You told me last night that you love me, that I'm yours. Well, you're mine too, and I protect what's mine." She moved to the arsenal, studied the weapons with the detached interest of someone who'd grown up with a father who'd taught her to shoot at country estates. "So tell me the plan. How do we end Dmitri Sokolov?" Alexander stared at her like he'd never seen her before. "You're serious?" "Completely. You said I was strong, that I'd be formidable once I stopped being afraid of my own power." Victoria selected a small handgun, checked it with practiced efficiency. "Consider me no longer afraid." A slow, dangerous smile spread across Alexander's face. The smile of a wolf recognizing another predator. "You are extraordinary, Mishka. Absolutely extraordinary." "So I've been told." She turned to face him, gun held confidently. "Now, husband, tell me how we're going to save our family and destroy the monster from your past." Alexander pulled her close, kissed her hard, a kiss that was promise and possession and partnership all at once. "We're going to do what I should have done 3 years ago. We're going to make Dmitri Sokolov disappear. Permanently." "Is that legal?" No, but it's necessary. He pulled back, eyes blazing. And when it's done, when he can never threaten you again, I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me. I won't regret it. Victoria kissed him again, because I chose the man, not the monster. And that man is worth fighting for. Outside, dawn was breaking over London. Inside, war was being declared. And standing together, husband and wife, partners in redemption and revenge, Victoria and Alexander Volkov prepare to face the darkness one final time, whatever it cost, whatever it took. Together. Chapter 7, Blood and Redemption. The trap was set within 48 hours. Alexander's network moved with terrifying efficiency. Men who'd been waiting for years for permission to act, to protect their boss the only way they knew how. Victoria watched him transform from the vulnerable man she'd held in the darkness to something colder, sharper, a predator preparing to hunt. But he never shut her out. True to his word, they planned together. Dmitri will come for you directly, Alexander explained, spreading maps and photographs across the dining table. He's been patient until now, testing boundaries, making threats. But the wedding changed everything. He knows I care about you. Really care, not just as property to protect. That makes you irresistible bait. So we give him what he wants. Victoria studied the photographs of Dmitri Sokolov. Cold blue eyes, cruel smile, the face of a man who enjoyed causing pain. We offer me up, under controlled circumstances. Victor's gravelly voice joined the conversation. The massive head of security had barely left Alexander's side since the threat came. We leak information that Mrs. Volkov will be at the gallery opening tomorrow night. Small venue, limited exits, perfect for an ambush, his or ours. He'll expect a trap, Victoria said. Of course he will. Alexander's smile was sharp as broken glass. But he'll come anyway, because Dmitri's fatal flaw has always been arrogance. He thinks he's smarter, faster, more ruthless than me. He thinks marrying you made me soft. Did it? Victoria asked quietly. Alexander met her eyes. It made me more dangerous, because now I have something to lose. The Hartwell Gallery was small, exclusive, the kind of place where London's art elite gathered to pretend they understood contemporary installations while drinking expensive wine. Victoria had chosen it specifically, familiar territory from her days at the Tate, a space she knew intimately. She wore red silk that clung to her curves like a second skin, diamonds at her throat, Alexander's wedding gift, insured for more than most people's houses. Her hair fell in waves down her back. She looked like a target, deliberately exposed, an offering to draw the predator out. You don't have to do this, Alexander said for the dozenth time as their car pulled up to the gallery. We can find another way. There is no other way. You said it yourself. He won't stop until one of us is dead. Victoria turned to face him, saw the fear he was trying to hide beneath cold control. I trust you, Alexander. I trust you'll keep me safe. With my life. He pulled her close, kissed her hard, not for show, but because he needed to remind himself what he was fighting for. Victor and the team will be everywhere. The moment Dmitri makes his move, they move. But if anything goes wrong, it won't. If anything goes wrong, he continued firmly, you run. You don't try to be brave. You don't try to fight. You run, and you let us handle this. Victoria wanted to argue, to insist she could handle herself. But looking at the genuine terror in Alexander's eyes, she nodded. I'll run. I promise. Good girl. He pressed one more kiss to her forehead. I love you, Mishka. Whatever happens tonight, remember that. I love you, too. She squeezed his hand. Now let's end this. The gallery was already crowded when they arrived. Art collectors, critics, socialites who come to see and be seen. But Victoria felt the presence of Alexander's security team like ghosts in the corners. Victor by the entrance. Alexei near the bar. Dmitri, not Sokolov, but Alexander's Dmitri, watching the back exit. They were ready. Alexander stayed at her side for the first hour, playing the attentive husband, his hand never leaving her waist. But gradually, deliberately, he began to separate. conversations with potential business partners, a phone call that pulled him toward the private offices and back, creating distance, creating opportunity. Victoria stood alone near a massive abstract painting, champagne in hand, feeling exposed despite the crowd around her. Every instinct screamed danger. Every nerve was alight with the certainty that she was being watched. And then she saw him. Dmitry Sokolov stood near the sculpture exhibit, blue eyes locked on her with predatory interest. He raised his glass in a mocking toast. Then he moved, not toward her, but toward the back hallway. An invitation, a challenge. Victoria's hand trembled slightly as she set down her champagne. This was it, the moment everything had been building toward. She touched the small earpiece hidden beneath her hair. He's here, moving to the back corridor. Alexander's voice crackled in her ear, tight with tension. Do not follow him. Stay in the public space. Victor is moving to intercept. But Victoria was already walking. Not because she was brave, but because she understood something the men didn't. Dmitry wouldn't make his move in public. He wanted privacy for whatever he planned, which meant the only way to end this was to give him that privacy, on their terms. The back corridor was dim, lined with offices and storage rooms. Dmitry stood at the far end, that cruel smile playing on his lips. The little bride, he purred in Russian-accented English. All alone, how careless of Alexander to lose track of his most valuable possession. I'm not his possession. Victoria kept her voice steady, aware of the weapon hidden in her clutch, aware of Victor closing in behind her. I'm his wife. There's a difference. Is there? Dmitry moved closer, circling like a shark. You were bought and paid for, just like everything else Alexander owns. A pretty English rose to make the Russian wolf look civilized. But we both know what he really is, don't we? A killer, a thug, a man who will never escape what the Sokolovs made him. The Sokolovs made him survive. I made him human. How touching. Dmitry's hand shot out, faster than she expected, gripping her arm with bruising force. Let's see if Alexander's humanity survives watching you bleed. The knife appeared from nowhere, a flash of silver, deadly and quick. But before it could find flesh, Victoria moved. Her father had taught her to shoot, but her self-defense instructor at Oxford had taught her to fight. She twisted in Dmitry's grip, brought her knee up hard, aimed for the most vulnerable target. Dmitry grunted in pain, his grip loosening just enough. Victoria grabbed the weapon from her clutch, not the gun Alexander had given her, but pepper spray, practical and effective. She sprayed directly into Dmitry's face. He screamed, stumbling back, clawing at his eyes. And then the corridor exploded into motion. Victor appeared first, a mountain of control violence. He hit Dmitry like a truck, slamming him against the wall with enough force to crack plaster. The knife clattered to the floor. More of Alexander's men materialized from the shadows, surrounding them, weapons drawn. And then Alexander was there. He moved past Victoria without a word, all his attention focused on a man who tormented his past, killed his brother, threatened his wife. Dmitry looked up through streaming eyes, seeing his death in Alexander's face. You should have stayed in Moscow, Alexander said quietly. Should have let me go. But you couldn't, could you? You couldn't stand that I became more than what you made me. You're nothing. Dmitry spat, blood trickling from his split lip. A pretender playing dress-up. You think marrying that British whore makes you legitimate? You're still the scared boy who watched his mother die. Still the thug who killed for us. You'll always be ours, Volkov. Alexander's fist connected with Dmitry's jaw. Once, twice, 3 times. Each blow was measured, controlled. Decades of rage channeled into precise violence. Victoria watched, horrified and fascinated, seeing the monster Alexander had tried so hard to leave behind. Stop. Her voice cut through the sound of flesh hitting flesh. Alexander, stop. He froze, fist raised for another blow, breathing hard. Slowly, he turned to look at her. He threatened you. He tried to. I know. And he failed. Victoria stepped closer, placed her hand on Alexander's raised arm. You're not that man anymore. The one who solves everything with violence. You're better than this. Better than him. He killed Nikolai. I know, and nothing you do to him now will bring your brother back. She gently lowered his arm. But if you kill him here tonight, you become what everyone believes you are. You prove Dmitri right, that you're still just the Sokolov's trained monster. Alexander stared at her, chest heaving, knuckles bloody. Then what do you suggest? Let him walk away? Let him threaten you again? No. Victoria turned to Dmitri, still pinned against the wall by Victor. We give him to the police. We let the law handle him. You said you wanted to become legitimate, Alexander. Prove it. Trust the system instead of taking revenge with your own hands. The system doesn't work against men like Dmitri. It does when we have evidence. Victoria pulled out her phone, showing the recording she'd been making since entering the corridor. Assault, attempted murder, threats, all on video, plus whatever Victor's body camera caught. That's enough to put him away for years. Maybe forever, if we dig into his other crimes. Victor grunted agreement. Boss! She's right. We've been building a file on Sokolov for months. Hand him over to the authorities, and we bury him legally. No blowback on you. Alexander looked between Victoria, Victor, and the bloodied man who represented everything he'd tried to escape. You're asking me to trust the same system that let the Sokolovs terrorize Moscow for decades. I'm asking you to trust me. Victoria took his hand, heedless of the blood on his knuckles. I'm asking you to choose the man you want to be over the man you were. Please, Alexander. For us. For our future. For a long moment, Alexander didn't move. Victoria could see the war raging inside him. The desire for revenge against the desire for redemption. The monster against the man. Finally, he stepped back. Call Detective Inspector Morrison. Tell him we have a gift for him. Victor nodded, already pulling out his phone. Dmitri sagged against the wall, hatred burning in his swollen eyes. This isn't over, Volkov. Yes, it is. Alexander's voice was steel. You're going to prison, Dmitri, and I'm going to spend every day of my freedom being everything you said I could never be. Legitimate, successful, loved. He glanced at Victoria, and his expression softened. Happy. The police arrived within 20 minutes. Not the regular officers, but serious men with serious faces who clearly knew exactly who Alexander Volkov was and what this arrest meant. Dmitri was led away in handcuffs, still spewing threats and curses, but they rang hollow now. Impotent rage from a man who'd lost. When they were finally alone, truly alone, the gallery cleared, the team dispersed. Alexander pulled Victoria into his arms and held her like a drowning man finding shore. I almost lost control, he said into her hair. Almost became the monster again. But you didn't. You chose differently. Because of you. He pulled back to look at her, eyes bright with emotion. You saved me, Victoria. From Dmitri. From myself. From the darkness I thought I'd never escape. We saved each other. She cupped his face, thumbs brushing across his cheekbones. You gave me strength when I thought I had none. And I helped you remember who you wanted to be. That's what partners do. Partners. Alexander smiled, real genuine, the kind of smile she thought he'd forgotten how to make. I like that. Husband and wife. Partners in crime. Hopefully no more crime, Victoria corrected. Partners in legitimacy. Partners in life. He kissed her softly, sweetly, a promise sealed without words. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Together, Victoria agreed. They walked out the gallery hand in hand, leaving behind the violence and the threats and the ghosts of Alexander's past. Outside, London sprawled in glittering darkness, full of possibility and promise. Tomorrow, there would be police statements, legal proceedings, the slow machinery of justice grinding forward. Dmitri Sokolov would stand trial, and Alexander's carefully constructed new life would face scrutiny. But tonight, walking toward their car with their hands linked and their future uncertain, but shared, Victoria and Alexander Volkov were simply two people who'd found something worth fighting for. Each other. Chapter 8. The Crown and the Conscience. The media storm was predictable but exhausting. Russian billionaire's wife thwarts assassination attempt, Alexander Volkov. From criminal past to legitimate future, the bride who tamed the wolf. Victoria sat in Alexander's study 3 weeks after the gallery incident, watching news coverage with a mixture of amusement and horror. The press had latched onto their story like wolves onto wounded prey. Every detail dissected, every angle analyzed, their entire relationship reduced to clickbait headlines. You should see the one from the Daily Mail, Emma said, scrolling through her phone. She'd been staying at the mansion since the attack, too worried about Victoria to return to university. They're calling you Britain's bravest bride. It's absolutely mental. It's absolutely exhausting, Victoria corrected, rubbing her temples. I defended myself with pepper spray. I'm not some action hero. You stood up to a man who wanted to kill you. I'd say that qualifies. Alexander entered the study, impeccably dressed as always, but Victoria could see the tension in his shoulders. He'd been in meetings with lawyers all morning, preparing for Dimitri's trial. How are you holding up? I'm fine. You're the one who looks stressed. The prosecution wants me to testify, in detail, about my past with the Sokolovs, about Nikolai, about everything I've spent years trying to bury. He loosened his tie, a rare concession to discomfort. They want to paint Dimitri as a monster, which means painting me as his victim. I'm not sure I can do that without destroying everything I built. Victoria stood, crossed him, took his hands. Then we tell the truth, not the version that makes you look weak, but the version that shows your strength. You survived the Sokolovs. You escaped. You built something legitimate. That's not weakness. That's triumph. The papers won't see it that way. They'll see former Russian mobster turned billionaire. My business partners will get nervous. The board might push for my resignation. Let them. Victoria said it firmly, surprised at herself with conviction in her voice. If they can't see that you're more than your past, then they don't deserve you. We'll build something new, something completely ours. Alexander stared at her. You'd give up all this? The mansion, the money, the security? I'd give up everything for you. Don't you know that by now? She smiled. Besides, I have plans of my own. That PhD program I mentioned, I've been accepted, starting next term. Victoria, that's... He pulled her close, kissed her soundly. That's amazing. When did this happen? Last week. I applied before the wedding. Before I even thought we'd become this. She gestured between them. I withdrew the application after we married, thinking I'd need to focus on being Mrs. Volkov. But then I realized I can be both, your wife and myself. So I reapplied. You're extraordinary. Alexander's smile was genuine, reaching his eyes for the first time in days. Absolutely extraordinary. What will you study? Contemporary Russian art. Actually, specifically, pieces created by artists who escaped Soviet oppression. I figure if I'm going to understand my husband, I should understand where he comes from. Something shifted in Alexander's expression. Surprise melting into love, so intense it made Victoria's breath catch. I don't deserve you. You earn me. There's a difference. She kissed him softly. Now about that testimony. Tell them the truth. All of it. Show them the man you were, the man you became, and the man you're still becoming. Let me sit in that courtroom and show them you're not facing this alone. We're partners, remember? Partners, Alexander agreed. In everything. Emma cleared her throat delicately. This is very sweet, but I'm still in the room. And while I'm thrilled you two are disgustingly in love, I have news. Dad wants to see you both. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Victoria hadn't spoken to her father since the wedding. Couldn't forgive him yet for selling her, even if it had somehow led to this unexpected happiness. Tell him no, Alexander said coldly. He has nothing to say that we need to hear. Actually, he does. Emma looked uncharacteristically serious. He's selling everything. The house, the remaining properties, all of it. He's paying you back, Alexander. Every penny of the $47 million. Silence. That's impossible, Victoria said finally. He doesn't have that kind of money. He does now. He's been gambling again, but properly this time with advisors, with strategy. And he won. Big. Enough to clear his debt and then some. Emma paused. He says he wants to give Victoria a choice. A real one. To annul the marriage if she wants. To be free. Victoria felt Alexander's hand tighten on hers. Felt him preparing for her to leave. After everything, the nightmares, the confessions, the love they'd built. He still thought she might walk away. Tell father to keep his money, Victoria said firmly. Or donate to charity. I don't want it. And I'm not annulling anything. I chose this marriage. Emma, I chose Alexander. Not because of debt or duty, but because I love him. Are you sure? Emma asked gently. Because no one would blame you if... I'm sure. Victoria looked at Alexander, saw the vulnerability in his eyes, the fear that he'd somehow lose her despite everything. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Alexander exhaled shakily, pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for choosing me. Always, she whispered back. For better or worse, remember? Emma smiled, tears in her eyes. I'll tell Dad. He'll be, well, probably disappointed that his grand gesture didn't work, but maybe also relieved. I think he was worried you'd actually leave. After Emma departed, Victoria and Alexander stood together in the study, holding each other in the afternoon light. Outside, London moved on, oblivious of the quiet revolution happening in the Kensington mansion, where a forced marriage had become something real. We should do something, Alexander said eventually. Celebrate. Your acceptance to the PhD program, your father's offer, surviving Dmitri. Take your pick. What did you have in mind? There's a charity auction tonight. Contemporary art, actually, benefits a foundation for children orphaned by violence. He paused. It was Nikolai's favorite cause. Before. I've avoided going for years, but maybe it's time. Victoria understood what he was really saying. It was time to honor his brother's memory, to turn grief into something good. I'd love to go with you. That evening, they attended the auction together. Victoria in a midnight blue gown that made Alexander forget how to form sentences. Alexander in another perfectly tailored suit that drew admiring glances from half the women in the room. But unlike the gala weeks ago, there was no performance. No masks. Just them, comfortable in their own skin, in their relationship, in the life they were building. They bid on a sculpture, a twisted metal piece representing resurrection from ashes, and won it for an obscene amount of money. It would look perfect in the study, Victoria decided. A reminder of what they'd survived. Mr. Volkov, Mrs. Volkov. A reporter appeared, camera crew in tow. Victoria tensed, but Alexander squeezed her hand reassuringly. Can we ask you a few questions about the upcoming trial? Briefly, Alexander said, his media training evident. Is it true you'll be testifying against Dmitry Sokolov? Some people are saying you're just as guilty, that you were part of the same criminal organization. Victoria felt Alexander's jaw tighten, saw him preparing to shut down, to retreat behind his walls. She stepped forward before he could. My husband was a victim of the Sokolov organization, she said clearly, confidently. He was forced into violence to protect his family. But he escaped that life, built something legitimate, and has spent years atoning for things he was forced to do. The fact that he's willing to testify, to expose his own painful past to ensure justice, shows the kind of man he really is. Not a criminal, a survivor. And yes, I'm incredibly proud of him. The reporter blinked, clearly not expecting such a passionate defense. And your relationship? Some people say it started as a business arrangement. Some people don't know what they're talking about. Victoria smiled, steel beneath silk. My husband and I may have had an unconventional beginning, but our love is very real. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have art to admire. She steered Alexander away, feeling him trembling slightly beneath her hand. Once they were alone in a quiet corner, he pulled her close. You didn't have to do that. Defend me to the press. Yes, I did, because they don't get to define you. Only you do, and I do, and we both know who you really are. She kissed him softly. Besides, I meant every word. I am proud of you, Alexander. Desperately, foolishly proud. I love you. He said it like a prayer, like absolution. I love you so much it terrifies me. Good. Love should be terrifying. It means you have something to lose. Victoria smiled. But you're not going to lose me. I'm not going anywhere. We're stuck with each other now. Thank God for that. They stayed at the auction until late, mingling with London's elite, no longer the outsiders but established members of society. People who'd once looked at Alexander with suspicion now approached with respect. People who'd once pitied Victoria now admired her strength. They'd both been transformed not by the marriage itself, but by choosing each other despite everything. On the drive home, Victoria rested her head on Alexander's shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing, the warmth of his hand on hers. "Were you thinking," he asked quietly, "that a few months ago I thought my life was ending, and now I can't imagine it any other way?" She looked up at him. "You were supposed to be my prison sentence, Alexander Volkov, but you became my freedom instead. Funny, I was thinking the same thing about you." He kissed her forehead. "You were supposed to be my final piece of legitimacy, my proof that I'd changed, but you became the reason I wanted to change, the reason any of it mattered. We saved each other. We did, and we'll keep saving each other, every day, for the rest of our lives." The car pulled to the gates of their home, because it was theirs now, truly, not his mansion that she occupied, but their shared space. Inside, the sculpture from the auction would eventually stand as a reminder of resurrection, of becoming something new from the ashes of what was. That night, lying in bed with Alexander's arms around her, Victoria thought about beginnings and endings, about debts paid and freedom earned, about monsters becoming men and victims becoming warriors, about a forced marriage that had become the greatest choice of her life. "Alexander," she whispered into the darkness. "MM, thank you for blackmailing my father." His laugh rumbled through his chest, warm and genuine. "You're welcome, Mishka, though I think you're supposed to resent me for that, not thank me. I probably should, but then I'd have missed all this." "Missed us?" She pressed closer. "Besides, you more than made up for it by becoming the best thing that ever happened to me." Sweet talker. He kissed her hair. "But the feeling is mutual. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, too. My redemption. My love. My wife. Your partner." "My partner," he agreed, "in everything." They fell asleep like that, tangled together, hearts beating in sync, two broken people who'd found wholeness in each other. Outside, London glittered in the night, full of stories and secrets and 1,000 other lives being lived. But inside the Kensington mansion, in a bed that had once known only nightmares, Victoria and Alexander Volkov slept peacefully, together, finally free. Epilogue. The light beyond the alley. 18 months later. The gallery opening was everything Victoria had dreamed of. Her gallery, because it was hers, built from the ground up with her vision, her curation, her name on the deed. The Ashford Volkov Gallery stood in a converted warehouse in Shoreditch, all exposed brick and modern lighting, showcasing contemporary Russian artists who'd escaped oppression to create beauty from pain. It was, Alexander had told her with a knowing smile, very on brand for both of them. Victoria stood near the entrance, greeting guests, feeling the thrill of accomplishment humming through her veins. Her Ph.D. was nearly complete. Another year and she'd have a degree, the legitimacy she'd always wanted in the art world. But this gallery was already making waves. Critics were calling it bold, necessary, a stunning debut from a curator with uncommon vision. She'd done this, not as Mrs. Alexander Volkov, trophy wife to a reformed criminal, but as Dr. Victoria Ashford Volkov, scholar and curator in her own right. "You look entirely too pleased with yourself," a familiar voice murmured in her ear. Victoria turned to find her husband watching her with undisguised pride. Alexander in a charcoal suit, hair slightly longer than when they first met, the harsh edges of his face softened by happiness. He looked younger, lighter, like a man who'd finally put down a burden he'd carried too long. "I am pleased with myself. This is incredible." She gestured to the crowded space. Everyone came. The Times did that feature. 3 pieces have already sold. 4, Alexander corrected, kissing her temple. I just bought the Sokolov piece. Alexander, that's cheating. You can't buy art at my opening just to make me look successful. I'm not. I'm buying it because it's brilliant, and because the artist's statement made me cry in the bathroom for 5 minutes. He paused, vulnerability flickering across his face. It's about losing a brother to violence, about carrying that grief and transforming it into something beautiful. I thought we could hang it in the nursery when the time comes. Victoria's breath caught. They'd been talking about children. Carefully, tentatively, both of them aware of the weight that decision carried. But this was the first time Alexander had referred to it as a certainty rather than a possibility. When the time comes, she agreed softly, taking his hand, which won't be for another year at least. I want to finish my doctorate first. Whenever you're ready. I'm not going anywhere. He pulled her close, mindless of their audience. Have I told you today that I'm proud of you? Only 3 times. But I don't mind hearing it again. I'm proud of you, Mishka. Desperately, impossibly proud. He kissed her, soft and sweet. You took a forced marriage to a criminal and turned it into a doctorate, a gallery, and a man worth saving. That's quite an accomplishment. We saved each other, remember? Victoria smiled against his lips. I just had better PR. A throat cleared delicately. They pulled apart to find Emma standing there, grinning like the cat who'd gotten the cream. At 21, she'd grown from excitable teenager to confident young woman, currently working as Victoria's assistant curator while finishing her own art history degree. Hate to interrupt the romance, but Vic, the Times critic want to interview you. And Alexander, Victor is here with that thing you asked about. Alexander's expression shifted. Something serious, sliding beneath the happiness. Thank you, Emma. Victoria, I need to handle something quickly. 10 minutes. Is everything okay? Everything's fine. Better than fine, actually. I'll explain soon. He kissed her once more, then disappeared into the crowd with Victor's massive form trailing behind. Victoria gave her interview, discussed her vision for the gallery, talked about amplifying voices that had been silenced by oppression. The critic ate it up, scribbling notes, clearly preparing to write something glowing. By the time Victoria finished, Alexander had returned, but now there was something almost nervous in his expression. Come with me, he said, taking her hand. There's someone I want you to meet. He led her to a quiet corner where a young woman stood studying one of the paintings, mid-20s, dark hair, delicate features that were startlingly familiar. When she turned, Victoria saw Alexander's gray eyes looking back at her. Victoria, Alexander said, voice tight with emotion. This is Katia. My sister. The world tilted slightly. Sister? But you said... I thought I was alone. Thought the Sokolovs had taken everyone. Alexander's hand trembled in Victoria's. But after Dmitri's trial, after everything came out, Victor found records. Found her. She was only 2 when our mother died. The Sokolovs gave her to a family in St. Petersburg, wiped her from existence. She didn't even know I existed until 3 months ago. Katia smiled tentatively. My brother has told me much about you, Victoria, about how you saved him, how you gave him a reason to stop running from his past. Her English was accented but clear. I wanted to meet the woman who gave me back my family. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. She looked at Alexander, saw him struggling to contain his own emotions, and understood the magnitude of this moment. He'd spent years believing he was alone, that his entire family had been destroyed by the Sokolovs. But here was proof that love survived, that even the cruelest attempts to destroy families couldn't completely succeed. I'm so happy to meet you, Victoria said, embracing Katia warmly. You have no idea how much this means to him. To us. Victor is helping me with immigration papers. Katia explained, if everything works out, I'll be able to stay in London, start a new life here, maybe even work at a gallery owned by my impossibly accomplished sister-in-law. She smiled at Victoria. If you'd have me, of course. Of course. We. Victoria stopped, looked at Alexander. This is what you've been working on. All those mysterious meetings with Victor. The phone calls in Russian you said were business. I wanted to be sure before I told you. Didn't want to get my hopes up, or yours, in case it fell through. Alexander's voice cracked slightly. But she's here. She's real. I have family again. We have family. Victoria pulled him close, held him while he struggled with emotions too big for words. Around them, the gallery buzzed with life and art and possibility. But in this quiet corner, a family was being reborn from ashes. This is perfect, Victoria whispered. All of it. The gallery, your sister, us. It's everything we fought for. It's everything you gave me. Alexander pulled back, cupped her face. I was dead inside when I bought your hand in marriage, Victoria. Walking corpse going through the motions. But you breathed life back into me. Made me remember what it felt like to hope, to love, to believe I could be more than my worst moments. And you gave me strength. Showed me I was brave enough to choose my own path, even when that path led straight to the monster's den. She smiled through tears. We're quite the team. The best team. He kissed her forehead. Now, shall we introduce my sister to London society? I have a feeling they're going to love her almost as much as they've learned to tolerate me. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of introductions and conversations and joy. Katia was charming, intelligent, full of stories about growing up in St. Petersburg without knowing her true history. Emma attached herself to the other young woman immediately, already planning shopping trips and museum visits. Even Richard and Victoria's mother showed up. Her father sober for 6 months now, attending AA meetings, try to rebuild the bridges he burned. Victoria watched it all with a sense of wonder. This life, messy, complicated, beautiful, had come from the darkest beginning, from debt and blackmail and forced vows. But somewhere in the darkness, they'd found light. As the night wound down and guests began to depart, Victoria found herself standing in front of the Sokolov piece Alexander had bought. The painting about lost brothers and transformed grief. She thought about Nikolai, the brother Alexander had lost. About Katia, the sister he'd found. About the way pain could be alchemized into beauty if you were brave enough to try. Deep thoughts. Alexander came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. Just thinking about how far we've come. 18 months ago, I was walking down the aisle toward you, convinced my life was over. And now look at us. Gallery owner, PhD candidate, family rebuilt. Happy. Deliriously happy, Alexander agreed. Almost sickeningly so. Victor tells me I smile too much now. Says it's unsettling. Victoria laughed. Poor Victor. Having to work for a boss who's actually content. He'll survive. Alexander turned her to face him. Victoria, I need to tell you something. The seriousness in his voice made her heart skip. What is it? Dimitri's trial concluded yesterday. 45 years, no possibility of parole. And with the evidence we provided about the Sokolov organization, the entire family is being investigated. It's over, Mishka. Really, truly over. No more looking over our shoulders. No more threats. We're free. Victoria felt something loosen in her chest, a tension she'd been carrying without realizing it. We're free. Completely. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, which is why I wanted to give you this. Alexander, you already gave me a ring. Several, actually. This is different. Open it. Inside the box was a simple gold band, elegant and unadorned. No diamonds, no excessive luxury, just pure, beautiful gold. The rings I gave you before were bought with old money, Alexander explained quietly. Money earned through violence and crime, and all the things I'm trying to atone for. But this ring, I bought it with money from my legitimate businesses. Clean money, honest money. And I wanted to ask, he took the ring, held it up. Victoria Ashford Volkov, will you stay married to me? Not because you have to, not because of debt or duty or anything except the fact that I love you and you love me. Tears streamed down Victoria's face. You're asking me to marry you again? I'm asking you to choose me again. Freely, with no blackmail, no pressure, no debt hanging over either of us. Just us choosing each other because we want to. His voice shook. Will you stay married to me, Victoria? Will you keep being my wife, my partner, my salvation? Yes. She held out her left hand, let him slide the simple gold band next to her engagement ring and wedding band. 3 rings now, one for forced beginning, one for the vows they'd made, and one for the choice they were making now. Yes, Alexander, I'll stay married to you. Today, tomorrow, for the rest of our lives. I choose you. I choose us. He kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of promise. Around them, the gallery held its breath, bearing witness to the second wedding, this renewal of vows that had started in darkness and emerged into light. When they finally pulled apart, Victoria laughed through her tears. You know, most people just get married once. We're not most people, Mishka. Alexander grinned. We're the debt collector and his bride, the monster and the savior, the blackmailer and the woman brave enough to choose him anyway. We're partners, Victoria corrected. In crime, in legitimacy, in life. Everything else is just details. Partners, he agreed. Always. They stood together in the gallery Victoria had built, surrounded by art that spoke of transformation and survival, wearing rings that told the story of how they'd saved each other. Outside, London moved on, unaware that in this converted warehouse in Shoreditch, 2 people had just renewed vows they'd once been forced to make. But this time they chose it, chose each other, chose love over fear, redemption over revenge, freedom over the safety of familiar cages. And somewhere in the space between who they'd been and who they'd become, Victoria and Alexander Volkov had found something neither of them expected when this started. Home. The end.